We talked about 40 games, and the Indians right now at the 40-game mark, they're at 21-18, which is 39 games. Let's take a look at the standings. AL Central, here you've got Minnesota, surprisingly, they got some hitting that we didn't expect, and they're getting some solid pitching. They've got a 4-game lead over the Indians, who are 3 games over the 500 mark. Then it's Detroit 18-20, Chicago. The Indians will be playing Chicago tonight for the 17th game of the week. That's all they play.
Well, you know what? Don't complain about that, the way the pitching is. We need more against Chicago and Kansas City.
Kansas City, almost, 14-27. They're 12 games back already. However, within the division, look at this. Minnesota 8-3, Chicago 9-8, Detroit 10-10, Kansas City 7-10, and the Indians, believe it or not, everybody talks about, well, they're only good because of the division they're in. Well, that may be, but they're only 6-9, a 40% mark in against AL Central foes. Now let's take a look at Jordan-Luplow, who went to Columbus, came back, and is showing some signs of being able to hit the ball at least. Not terribly a good defensive player. So where do the Indians stand right now? Here you've got Jordan-Luplow, since being called up 10 games, 9 for 27, that's .333, 2 doubles, 2 home runs in the same game, 3 RBIs and 9 runs scored for Jordan-Luplow. Are they hoping against hope that he's the guy that's going to break out of this quandary of outfielders?
Well, you know, he was the Pirates minor league player of the year back in 2016, I think it was.
Yep.
2016, 2017. So he has some credentials. He's looked a lot better since he got called back up, you know. And so much of it with a guy that hasn't established himself as a big leaguer is the confidence. You have to be confident, and he clearly was searching for it. Looks a lot better.
I think there's a lot to it that you get sent down to the minors and you say, all right, what am I doing wrong here? It gives you time to look at what you did, as opposed to having to produce immediately in the big league level.
Well, and the other thing is you can't get caught up in trying to be what you think the Indians need.
Right.
You're limited by what your skill set is, and it takes a little bit for a younger player to realize that at the major league level. And let's hope that's what it is. That lineup still needs a lot of help. I mean, you need Ramirez to get back to the Jose-Ramirez, who's close to an MVP and all. He's getting better.
Getting better.
You need Kipnis to be the Kipnis back in 2016.
You think
that
he's
really
done?
hasn't happened.
I'm afraid he is.
Yeah, you know, when you go on 2+ years, it's hard to argue that he's not. I mean, there are spots where he looks like he's getting back to where he was, but it's not consistent enough.
Devin and Concord, for the record, I said I think Kippy's done. Right now, I reserve the right to change it, but right now he's struggling.
That is the Kippy fan club
Kippy
leader.
Report.
Yes,
we should have the Kippy report night in and night out. He's a guy. If you needed one guy, who's more important to come alive here, Ramirez or Kippy?
To what level?
Their level.
Well, if you get Ramirez back to the level where he's an MVP candidate, like Francisco-Lindor, I'd take that. Because I think Kipnis' ceiling's a lot lower. I think if you get Kipnis back to where he's hitting 265, and he's still, you know, again, it's 40 games in.
He's making plays at second base.
Yeah, the weather has not been good. And again, I make it sound like I'm making excuses for these guys, and I don't mean to be doing that. I'm just saying, don't call him done just yet. But
I reserve the right to Devin and Concord. All right, let's ask this: what's more likely to happen if the Indians are going to catch Minnesota? Is it because Minnesota is going to fall back, or the Indians are going to come up? And if that's the case, does that mean the pitching will have to come around, or Kipnis or Ramirez do? There's so many questions out there.
I think I don't think the Twins are going to be one of the top teams in the American League. I just don't think their pitching.
But you think they'll hang in the AL?
Yeah,
Central?
I think they will. You know, they're going to get back Miguel-Sano. That's middle of the lineup bat. You know, he'd be batting cleanup for the Indians. He hasn't played because of a foot injury, so he hasn't played at all. Now, having said that, Nelson Cruz had an MRI on his left wrist, so that's a middle of the order bat for the Twins that's hurting.
What's surprising you more, the Twins hitting or the Twins pitching?
Twins pitching. I thought the Twins were going to be a pretty good offensive team, and they are. I mean, they made some really nice, you know, kind of under the radar moves. Nelson Cruz was one of them. They signed Crone, the guy that plays first base. Again, he's not tearing it up, but he's a good player. Polanco. I mean, they have a legitimate offensive lineup. Their pitching's pitching over their head right now, and it'll come back a little bit.
Speaking of pitching over their heads, I'm surprised that Francona's using Hand the way that he is. He's putting him in non-saver positions.
I think...
I think he's frustrated.
Well, I think the problem is there's not a whole lot of guys that he trusts down there yet. And trust is something that a pitcher in the bullpen has to earn.
Yeah.
And you got to earn it every year. Yeah, the problem is there aren't a lot of guys you can go to in a tight game. Having said that, the Indians' bullpen is among the best in the American League.
It has not been their problem.
No, far from it. The problem is, they're not scoring more than 2 or 3 runs a game. And as a starting pitcher, they're not going to come out and say that. But the starting pitchers know. They're not stupid. They see it. They know they can't make a mistake.
Can't make a mistake.
Yeah. And you fall behind 3 or 4 runs. This team's just not built to score that.
Right. And every pitcher, every once in a while, gets an easy game where he gets a 6-run lead and just coasts through 5 or 6. That's not happening with this team.
No.
Every run is so valuable.
Right. And it's going to be that way. It's going to be a constant uphill challenge, because you're not going to get many games where the offense puts 6 or 7 runs on the board.
Well, they'll be